Welcome to Chalk Talk, Danville Public Schools Weekly News Magazine. I'm Diane Locker, your host. We're looking at the end of the 2015-16 school year, and I have someone with me who is probably the perfect person to talk about that school year, and that's Dr. Stanley Jones. And Dr. Jones, this is not only the end of our school year, this is the end of your first year as our superintendent.
That's correct.
So it's got to be very important to you. What's going on?
It is important to me. It's been a good year. I guess if there's any surprise, it's gone fairly quickly. But it's been a very good year. There's a lot to talk about. What's going on right now is that we're at the most important part of the year, and that's where students are going to be graduating.
That is it. And I have just finished some interviews with your valedictorians and your salutatorians, and we've got some great kids graduating this year.
We do.
They're going to set the world on fire.
They are.
Yeah, and they're well prepared.
I certainly think so.
Okay. Now, let's talk about this year.
Okay.
And I'm going to kind of pick at some of the highlights that out in the community they probably read in the paper and you want to know a little bit more about. And I think one of those has to be the issue of some of the things that we started off the year on talking about GW and some of the discipline problems there. And I know you've made a lot of changes. And let's talk about what you've done about those things.
Okay. Well, I think the first thing I would say is when students are having difficulty, and that's what disruptive behavior is. The students are having difficulty. How do we address it? And part of that's the accountability piece. Part of that is how do we change the behavior, and part of that is how do we move forward and ensure that we have the appropriate climate in our schools. So we've done some things to address that.
Now, I want you to define that word you just used. I know what climate means. It's raining outside or the sun is shining. But when you talk about the school and the school climate, what do you mean by that, and how is that going to help?
Climate is, I think, for the community's perspective, climate is what you feel. When you walk into a school, what's the feeling you get about the school in terms of is it a positive climate? Do people seem to enjoy being there? Do children seem to be happy about their school climate? Or do you have a different sense? And it was clear at the beginning of this year, particularly at GW, that those issues of climate, there was inconsistency about how people felt about the climate at GW. There was concerns about, how safe it was, and some of the things that people may have perceived when they were in the school building in terms of student behavior, particularly during periods of transition. So what we've done a number of things, and I'll use GW sort of as a talking point because that's the one that gets a lot of concern, but it applies to all schools. Yes. But the issue of supervision, I think, is one of the things that people were concerned about. I'm
going to break in on you there, and I think you made a very good point there about the things that you're doing. A lot of time, we don't want people to think the only reason that we've done some of the things that you're going to be talking about is because of GW. You said it's school-wide. I mean, it's district-wide.
Yes.
When we have made a change in any of our policies that dealt with discipline or anything else, it's not just GW.
Exactly.
It's school,
the
entire district.
A simple example would be, when I walk into a school, I say good morning to everyone. Do students say good morning back? If we don't model that in our schools every day, then that's a climate issue. Is it our students are accustomed to the adults saying, good morning, Johnny, how you doing today? And Johnny says, good morning. I mean, those are the little things. When we talk about school climate, it's the little things that make the difference. How the students feel about the adults, and how the adults feel about the children, and how the community feels about the staff, and how the staff feels about the community. All those things compose school climate.
And climate can be, just like the weather out there, the climate can be good and welcoming, or the climate can be negative.
Exactly.
And what we're making our emphasis on is getting rid of the negative.
Absolutely.
And we're not talking about getting rid of the negative in kids, in ourselves.
Exactly.
How do we react? What do we do every day when those kids are coming in?
If a child is having a challenging day and they're not respectful, and as the adult, we're as disrespectful as the child, what are we modeling?
We are modeling, in that case, disrespect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I'll use this example. What I tell my own child is this: if someone is disrespectful to you and you maintain your respect, you magnify their disrespect. sometimes as the adults, we take disrespect personal.
Yes. Yes, I do.
And I get that.
Yeah.
But what we really ought to do is recognize that we're dealing with children who are still developing skills to manage all kinds of scenarios in their lives. And they're doing it to some degree at a deficit because their reasoning skills, this is brain research now, their reasoning skills aren't as developed as ours. The research says that the human brain is not fully developed at the age of 25.
That's what I was going to say. I thought it was 24,
Yeah,
and 25. And when you look at it that way, it gets kind of scary.
Right. Another way of saying it is our children don't know how much they need us.
Okay.
As adults.
All right, we'll tell them that.
Yeah.
One of the things you did in the very beginning of the year that I think made a difference in, not so much a difference in discipline, but how we handle discipline, and that is you changed the, let me call it the reporting, the way we report. If we have a problem in the school, if we have a discipline problem, you changed the way we handle that.
I did.
Ultimately.
Yeah, and I would say we changed it because what we did is we worked with our staff to talk about if there's a problem with a student in a school or a behavior in the school, who should intervene first and who should intervene last. And because our principals and our leadership in our schools have the relationships with students because they see them every day and have that familiarity, if there's a problem, we should try to resolve it at that level first.
Well, that's the closest level to the incident.
Exactly.
That is, that teacher, that principal, the people in the school, they're the ones that are first affected by it.
Absolutely.
So they're the ones that know the most about it.
Right. So suppose that there's a discipline, there's a behavior, there's a consequence, and then we're trying to work through what the consequences will be. The first level of appeal, so if a parent disagrees, the first level of appeal would be with the principal, because the principal has a relationship not only with the student, but with the family.
But is that a change? Is that particular
that is
step
a change? That's a change in that I'm not sure we did that systemically. Some schools probably did it, some schools didn't. So we made that consistent across our schools. We set that expectation that it's a perfect opportunity for a principal, if a student is struggling, to invite the parent in, invite the child in and say, what's going on, Johnny? How do we work through this? Because in order for that behavior to change, it's a partnership with the school official, the parent, and the student. So that's why we want to intervene at that level. And then beyond that, what we used to do is it came to a 3-person panel in the school board office composed of school board office staff members or staff, and then it went to the board. What happens now is it comes to a discipline hearing officer. We've changed that person's title to Director of Intervention Services.
But now, isn't that position, correct me if I'm wrong here, isn't that position housed in a new school safety, an umbrella of, I forget what you call it.
Office of School Safety, Discipline, and Community Engagement.
Yeah. And when you look at that title, there's a lot in that office beyond just discipline.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of goals in there. There are goals for achievement. There are goals to keep kids from coming back through the system, those types of things. But now that office has been moved to GW, hasn't it?
Well, the head of the office has been moved there, and that's
Okay.
Dr. Dave Cochran, we changed his title to Executive Director of School Safety and Discipline. So he has oversight. So Dave's office is located on the George Washington High School campus. Part of that was because most of the concerns that the community was expressing about any of our schools were primarily at GW. Because think of it this way, GW has the largest number of students of any school.
Any school.
And the oldest students in any school. So our students closest to being adults are all housed at GW. So it made sense to place his office there. Can't promise his office will remain there because of some of the changes we've made. But
they also are looking out into the community, like who can help let's say you have that meeting where the parents come in and the principal is there and we find out, yes, there's a need. There's a need that is developed in the home. Isn't that office also setting themselves up so that they can find the resources to fill those needs?
That is correct. What we've done with that office is we've reached out to all the agencies that provide support to children and families in our community. So social services, Danville, Pennsylvania Community Services Board, other agencies. And what we've done is we've created a relationship with them now so that if a child needs mentoring, we can provide it. If the parent needs help with parenting classes or parenting skills, we can provide it. If the child is struggling with some housing need, we can connect them to a resource.
See, I don't know. I don't think there was a place, a one-stop place where parents could find this information out in the past. If you're having a problem with your child, you get caught up in that problem and you don't realize how much help is out there.
Exactly.
And through this particular office that's been established, that help is there.
Yeah, the challenge in our community was that there are resources out there, but they were never networked to the degree that it was easy for a parent or child to navigate through them. We're providing the mechanism for accessing all the various resources.
That's a very valuable,
yes.
valuable thing.
Yes.
I'm not asking for statistics here or anything like that, but if you look at the beginning of this school year and some of the things that were so highly published about discipline, how does that look now? Where are we? Where are we at a GW? Where are we as a district?
We know that we've reduced the number of suspensions. Now, that doesn't mean the number of infractions necessarily. The number of behavior infractions has changed as much as how we deal with them. And what that means is this: if we are intervening when a child is disruptive and misbehaves, and we're able to change that behavior to the degree that we can reduce the consequences of a punishment, which would result in the child being out of school.
That's what I'm saying. If you've reduced suspensions,
right,
you are keeping the students in school, and that's what's important.
And not for the sake of keeping kids in school as much as for the
sake of the child.
Sake of the child, sake of changing behavior, and sake of helping that child find success so that they graduate. You know, it's a delicate balance, because some people will hear we reduce suspensions and they think that we've gotten softer.
No.
Versus, are we more effective at channeling resources to change behavior?
You had a saying that I heard you mention several times in the beginning of the year, something about behavior, something about changing behavior that was...
Well, I used to ask the question, does punishment change behavior?
That's it. That's the one that I thought, and I think that goes to what you were just talking about. In other words, suspend them.
Right.
But what have you done?
Well, let's talk about when I was in school. If I was suspended from school, what changed my behavior wasn't the suspension. What changed my behavior is what my parents did or what I got from home that influenced my decision making. If we don't have those same structures in all of our homes anymore, then why would we anticipate that simply removing a child from school is going to change behavior? But if we empower the parents and we give them the skills and the will to hold their children accountable and support what happens at school and create that type of relationship where there's trust between the parent in the school, then we change behavior. So ultimately, what changes behaviors is relationships.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's been built into the process.
Yes.
We're going to take a quick break now, and when we come back, I want to kind of touch on that other area that I think has been important to you this year, and that's training, staff development and training.
Yes.
Be sure to come back after the break, and we're going to get into talking a little more about training and what we're going to be doing for our staff. Okay.
Hello everyone, my name is Alexandra Reddy and I'm the Beta Club president here at Galileo Magnet High School. Let me tell you about Beta Club. Beta Club is a national academic club that focuses on community service. And in fact, our motto is let us lead by serving others. So every month, the Beta Club here at Galileo completes a service project for our community and also for our school. And then in February, we travel to the state convention where we compete with other schools in the areas of English, science, social studies, talent competitions, and it's a really awesome experience. But I also have the honor of being the Virginia State Beta Club president, an election that I won back in February at the convention. So this means that I have to travel to at least 2 other state conventions this year. There's North Carolina, South Carolina, all across the country that I am able to travel to. So I'm very blessed to be the state president, and I'm excited for what the year holds and making Galileo proud and making Virginia Beta proud.
Hello, my name is J.D. Edmonds, and this is my wife.
Janine Edmonds.
I am the Bonner Booster President, and I'm encouraging all you parents to get involved with your child's education, get involved with the community, and show your support for your kids' school.
Continue to be that bridge between the community, school, and family.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, I'm here with Dr. Stanley Jones, and we're talking about this school year. It's been his first school year, and it's also the end for all of our students and all of those graduates this year. And we want to take this opportunity before we start talking to congratulate each and every one of the 2016 graduates.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
Yes.
Huge deal. In the first half, we talked about discipline, what we've done about that this year. And you had another goal this year that we've talked about some, and I don't know that the community really gets into this much, but I think they need to know more about it, and that is the issue of staff development.
Yes.
What kind of training we're going to give to our staff, and mainly when we talk about that, we have a lot of staff, they're not all teachers, but we usually make most of our staff development at instruction.
We do.
Because that's where we're going to have the most effect. So
Exactly.
tell me what you're thinking in lines of staff development.
Well, the first thing is when you talk about instruction, I'm fond of saying that if we talk about how students develop literacy skills, reading, writing, and I call thinking skills, what does that instruct? How do we help our students learn to write? How do we help our students learn to read? And the way that we do that should be fairly consistent at the elementary level across schools. Here's why. What a third grader learns in one school should be consistent with what a third grader learns in another school.
Another school within our district.
Within our district. Why? Because we have standards of what students are supposed to learn.
Yes.
And we have expectations for when students should learn it. And the flexibility comes how. That's the way teachers engage students in learning. But so the what should be consistent, the how can be different. And so
the how deals with the delivery, the
delivery of instruction and the climate in the classroom and
that's going to depend on who you're teaching.
That depends on the personality of the teacher and the collective personality and individual personalities of the children. But what they learn, the state has set standards, which are not a bad thing. I'm fond of saying it this way. We have standards for restaurants, standards for safety. Shouldn't we have standards for learning?
Yes.
So the state has set standards for learning that make sense, that are appropriate for as students matriculate from kindergarten through 12th grade. That makes sense. Unfortunately, standards of learning tests
don't make sense.
Don't make sense and create a lot of confusion, to be quite candid. But the idea that, and I would argue that even when back in the dark ages when I was in school, there were standards for learning. They may not have been called that, but there were standards. So we want to ensure that the strategies that we use to ensure that learning is optimal exist across all of our schools with all of our staff. So when we talk about professional development, that's what we're talking about. Is how do we give our teachers the capacity to make sure that students are really learning by giving our teachers all the skills and the support they need to truly engage students in learning.
We talked about discipline in the first half of the show. Everything that you just talked about is also an important part of discipline.
Absolutely.
The child that is in school, even you as an adult, myself, you go to a meeting, you can't figure out what's going on. They're talking over your head.
Exactly.
So what do? You don't pay attention.
Right.
You might do some texting and that type of thing. You're not engaged.
Exactly.
And that's what you're talking
That's what we're
about,
talking
is
about.
keeping those students engaged.
Right. I'll use a secondary school example, Algebra 1. If there's certain skills you should learn in mathematics related to Algebra 1, shouldn't they be fairly consistent? If you're taking an Algebra 1 class at Galileo or an Algebra 1 class at GW or an Algebra 1 class at Langston or an Algebra 1 class at Bonner or Westwood, what students should learn in Algebra 1 should be fairly consistent.
Another thing that addresses, we do have a transient population.
Yes, we do.
Not transient in and out of the state or the city, but transient around the city.
Exactly. So another way of thinking of this is, what does instruction look like in Danville Public Schools? What should instruction look like? So when we're talking about professional development, those are essentially the questions we're asking: is what does instruction, what should it look like, and what does it look like? And what it should look like is what it's supposed to look like, and that is highly engaging, based on best practices, et cetera.
This is changing the subject a little bit, but you're talking about things that should happen. You're almost making it sound like common sense. I saw an article that's just come out, and it's titled, Not So Common Sense. Is this going back to some of the things that you and I have just been talking about here? Because a lot of the things you're saying, it's almost like saying this is what needs to be going on, should be going on.
Right.
What did you mean in that article, though?
What I mean, let's talk about that title. Everyone looks at school from the perspective of when they were in it.
Oh,
And so there's a common perception. The common perception for people is that my schooling is like it was when I was in school. So these articles are really therapeutic for me more than anything else, because it gives me a chance to talk about what really happens. So there's a common perception of schools should be like they were when I was in school, but the harsh reality is our world has changed dramatically since then. We live in an information age now. So we can't teach students like the information age doesn't exist. The fact of the matter is this: our students have access to information instantaneously. We didn't have that when we were children. So we have to change how we engage learning, because students know more. A 6-year-old knows more now than they did when I was 6.
But that's going back to what you were saying about staff development.
Exactly.
That's what reminded me to teach appropriately, to teach the way the population we're teaching to now. It's changed.
Well, none of our current students have been on the planet when the internet didn't exist.
Right.
We were born at a time and educated at a time when it didn't.
Oh, I know.
So-
I hate to say it. I
so-
know.
So that significantly changes how we, and the other piece of that, the flip side of that is we're also engaging in a future that we can't necessarily predict in terms of the types of opportunities that are going to present themselves to our students.
When you look at our lifetime, and maybe not even that long, the number of jobs that are gone, not because anyone took them away, they just faded away because of technology and those types of things. It is very difficult now to say, I am going to grow up and be a...
It is.
What is it?
Exactly.
Because it's changing. Our medical fields are changing. All fields are changing. So that's something you've got to think about. We're teaching to a future that we are not really sure what it is.
We grew up dreaming of Star Wars and drones, and
This
now we
is.
live in a world where drones are
Yes.
a part of everyday life.
Things have
So-
changed. In the time we have left, I'm going to ask you, these are tricky questions. If you don't want to answer them, you don't have to answer. This is your first year here at Danville Public Schools. You had to have a high point and you had to have a low point. And we'll term that in what was the most exciting to you, or whatever. Maybe we won't use the word disappointing, but maybe something you wanted to achieve that you didn't quite get there.
Well-
What would you say to me in answer to those two questions? What's the top and...
The top is, I think the top thing is that we have created a sort of I think there's a general understanding of where we're going as a school division. People feel good about the leadership, I think.
Yeah.
People feel good about the way the board is supporting our schools and our staff. There seems to be some common understanding of the direction that we need to go in, which is why we've gotten support for professional development, which is why we've gotten support from City Council. So there is faith, I guess is what I would say, from this community about where the school division's going, and there's hope that we're moving in the right direction. The challenge is patience.
But I think also the community has a feeling of being more a part of the school system now.
They do, but that's also the area where there's a lot more work that can be done. We have to find ways to engage parents more actively in learning, and we have some strategies and things that we're rolling out that are going to allow us to do that. But so the other part of it is what's been we can't do any of the things we want to do quick enough because there's so much to be done. So if I had to say what's been disappointing, we have a ton of ideas and a ton of real concrete examples and things that we need to do, but making those things happen takes time.
I think it's hard for people to realize. We have a school year. It starts and it ends and that type of thing. But it's hard to get some of these things done. It's hard to change the climate of a school system.
It is.
It goes all the way back. You know, you've got all these people in the school system working in the school system, and they're from our generation.
Yes.
You know, things have changed.
Right.
So much has changed, but it takes time.
Well, let me give you this example. I've asked this question recently. I've been out in schools and been out in the community talking to the community. I asked the question, when is the last time all Danville public schools were considered to be high-performing schools? And most people don't know the answer to that question. And when
I'm saying, wow,
Yeah.
I should know.
So when I ask that question, I'm really talking about our accreditation, how the state rates our school system. So the answer to that question was 4 years ago. Most people don't remember that. So 4 years ago, all Danville public schools were considered high-performing.
Do you know what? You wait till the news comes out next year.
Exactly.
We're going to do it. We're going to do it. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. And once again, I was there to welcome you to the school system in the beginning, and I'm welcoming you to our school system, telling you how happy we are to have you here.
Thank you.
It's been a great year.
It's been a fabulous year.
And everybody feels good about what they're doing, and that's important.
Yeah, we're anxious for next year to start, but we needed a little bit of a break.
Let's take a break. And contrary to what people think, it's not much of a break around here in the summer.
No. Well, we spend it. You know, we have a grand opening every year,
Yes.
so we're getting ready for it.
Well, thank you so much for everything that you've done, and thanks for spending time with us. And I look forward to, in a couple of months, doing a show on starting a new school year.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you out there for being with us. Thank you for all the times you've tuned in this year to see what's going on in Danville Public Schools. And I want you to do the very same thing when we crank up the school system again next year, because we want you to be involved in the things that we're doing here in Danville Public Schools.